Welcome to Chesapeake Technology Incorporated's training video on how to import side scan sonar data into your SonarWiz 5 project. To begin, you can see that I've got a blank slate of a new project here, and before I import some data, I'm going to start off with importing a base map so we have a little geo reference. So I'll click on Maps and then go to Add Base Map. That'll bring up a dialog box through which I can import my map. So this is what the box looks like. I'm just going to go to where I know the data is, and that'll open it up. See here in a second. There we go. Here is the base map for the area in which my sonar data was taken, and the data that I'm going to be importing. So this is our base map. This is our geo-reference base map. Now, to begin the file import process, first open the post-processing tab and then click on import. Then click on import side scan files, and that'll bring up another dialog box. Okay, within this dialog box we will input the initial settings for SonarWiz to import our sonar data. Now, there's a few things we need to know before we get started. First off, if when creating your project folder you chose to get your navigation information from a particular file, be sure to include those similar files, simply so that your navigation information for your project file will match the navigation information for your data, just so that those will appear in the right places on the map. Another word of the wise is just to use one file first off. So when you're applying your settings, the first time when you import file data, it sort of takes a little while to get it into SonarWiz 5. It takes a little while to apply those settings so that you can actually see the mosaic tiles. So if you want to test out your settings with one file at a time, probably a good bet. So as you can see, I've clicked on one file here. It shows up in the file name, and then we'll just run through some basic settings. The first off is the file type specific options, and you can see on these tabs different names of file types, kind of depending on what sonar you're using or what software you are using to record your sonar data. I know that mine is an XTF. If you're a little unsure of what type of file what type of file your data is, then simply look at your file name and look at the suffix, and that should hopefully be able to tell you a little bit about what type of file you're using. So I'm using XTF. All of these settings are a lot more advanced than we need to go into in this particular video, but there will be a video out on these file type settings a little later on. So here we go. I've got XTF. I'll come down, click on OK. So that lets SonarWiz know that I'm importing an XTF file. The next thing I'm going to do is look at the project sonar data using ... the sort of your navigation information section of the import process. So the default setting is course made good. Normally, it's a good bet. It's what we recommend to most of our users. Only if your sensor is very highly accurate. For instance, if it's using an inertial gyro or some equipment like that, something where you know your navigation information from your sensor is really credible, really accurate, that's the only reason we would ever recommend clicking sensor heading. But so for this demo, we'll click on course made good, and then you can also see the rotate port and rotate starboard boxes over here. Again, these are sort of rarely used, but it's just sort of a nice option to have if you know that there's some sort of natural bias in your data. And then you can choose to rotate this by degrees simply by clicking and moving your cursor about there. So next we'll move down to the import instructions, and this is sort of where this is really the meat of the import process. This is where a lot of your important information comes from. So we'll start on the right here. Percent of sonar range to map. You can see if you just click on that, it brings up a drop-down menu, and you can go all the way up to 100%, down to 0%, obviously. Since I know I'm using Klein client product sonar data, I know that the last 3% of my mosaic tiles will be a little skewed simply because of a flaw in the system. So I'm just going to click on 97%, and it's going to shrink the width of my mosaic lines just a little bit, just by that 3%, and it just kind of removes that excess that sort of error that comes with the client data. So I've chosen my 97%. Also, there are, since as you may know, there's two types of sonars essentially out in the world. There's a single channel or dual channel. And if you're using a dual channel sonar, you can select the channels that you're going to be importing. Often channels 1 and 2 are the high frequency channels, meaning high definition with a short band range, and then channels 3 and 4 are the lower definition, or the lower frequency, excuse me, and that's going to mean less detail over a wider range. So I'm going to select my lower frequency channels 3 and 4. So I'm going to click on preview, and we'll just take a look at what the files are going to look like, or what my one file is going to look like. Okay, so this is actually, that's not too bad. That's not too bad. But I will go ahead and adjust some settings and see if we can kind of perfect that image a little bit more. So here in this drop down menu next to it, it says no gain. You can click on that, and that's where we see multipliers of the base gain level for our image. So let's say if I wanted to try let's say 1/2 times gain. So splitting the base gain level in half. I'll click on preview again. That'll bring up that image, and then I can see if I like that. Okay, that's pretty good as well. Actually, it's a little less blown out. It gets, you can see it gets a little darker off to the sides, but that's not bad. Not bad. Now the thing to keep in mind when adjusting this base gain level is that not only are you boosting the signal of your useful data, but you're also boosting the signal of the sort of excess noise, the background noise that goes along with your project, and a lot of that you don't really need. So a new feature in SonarWiz 5 is this feature called thresholding. So if you look in the right hand side of the box, if you click enable, and then in order to determine, these are settings from a previous file. So in order to determine what sort of range my file needs to have, I'll click on sniff. And then that'll bring up this dialog box in which I will click select files. And then I'll come back to my previous files, or my project files. And once I've found those files, I'll select one, the one that I'm using to determine all these settings, and then I'll click open. And as you can see down on the bottom here, it is sniffing the file, looking for looking for the dynamic range within the data, and where the useful data comes in, at what range the useful data comes in, and what parts of the data we can sort of leave out. Okay, once the progress is stopped, if it has sniffed all the way through the file and you're still looking at this green grid right here, then you can click on the arrow to the right and pull that back a little bit. Okay, so there is the full grid. It's got the dynamic range of my sonar files, and as you can see towards the left here, that's where most of the data is. That's where most of the pertinent data anyway. So I will grab this arrow, slide it on down to about 1554, just kind of encapsulating the majority of the important data for this project. And then once I've got that set, I'll click OK. And so now I have a new setting, a new dynamic range setting, that will create a solid picture of my data without boosting the gain of the extra noise. So I'll click on preview again, And here's the new picture of my data. There we go. It's got nice and light up here, solid detail for a good ways back. You can even see some sort of blip there, away from the center of the beam. Okay, I'm pretty pleased with that. And actually, just to make sure I'm not getting any other interference, I'll click no gain on the drop down menu. And you can also see one more option here entitled split files if time gaps occur. This option is for after your initial import. If you run your test file, so select one file, select all your settings, and then import that file, and then when you see it, you notice that there was some dropped pings, and you'll notice this in the visual data by what looks like a sort of smear or a stretch of the data from one spot to the next. So if for some reason your sonar has dropped pings and there's just a gap in the data, SonarWiz will interpolate and sort of fill in that gap. And if it's a really large gap and it's not really something you want to have happen, then you can come in here and just click this option, and then SonarWiz will know if it sees, if the data says that there is a dropped ping, it will simply split that file and not interpolate the extra data, and you won't get those smear marks. It'll just be blank. So for your initial import with just this one test file, I will leave this blank. And then finally, we come down to the import geodesy option. This option is used to tell SonarWiz what coordinate system your data was using when it was recorded, so it knows how to properly interpret the data and apply it to maps and then export it. So if your data was imported using latitude and longitude, then it's fine. SonarWiz can perfectly understand that, and there's no need to check anything else. But if, as you can see in this option here, your navigation data is in an XY or some other grid format, then you can check this box and then say browse coordinate systems. So here's the dialog box, and as you can see, here's the group of coordinate systems. So you can choose all of your different systems based on what your data was collected in. And again, these settings are just going to let SonarWiz know what coordinate system your data was recorded in, so that SonarWiz can interpret the data that you recorded into a format that is going to be standardized and easily recognizable, and then you can export it in another format, or keep the same as you recorded, or keep the latitude and longitude. You can export it in whatever you want, but you need to tell SonarWiz what you're working with. So my data is actually recorded in latitude and longitude, so I will leave that blank, and I will unselect that box. And now that I've got all my options set and my one file selected, I'll click on open to import that file. And then we'll see this progress bar. So I've skipped ahead to the final part of the import process. You can see 90-something%. It doesn't take too long with one file. Like we said before, with multiple files it can certainly take a decent amount of time, just because it is essentially creating the initial visual image, which we'll be working with for the rest of the project, out of the sonar data. So we can see more progress is being made, and you'll also notice once the file is imported, the viewing window will be zoomed in on that file, and we'll see the mosaic line on top of the base map. There we go, and it takes a little while to draw the full line. There it is. So obviously this is zoomed in on a very small part of the map, and you can zoom in and it takes a little while to redraw, and you can also zoom out. So if you've zoomed in and you want to zoom out again, you can click on this button, and that'll say fit view to sonar. So that'll just zoom out a little bit so we can see the edges of our sonar data. Now, since we are using this one file as a test file, let's see just how well it looks. So you can click on this zoom rectangle box, and that's just a tool that enables you to select a portion of your mosaic, create a rectangle around it, and then you can get a little closer look at the mosaic that was created. See if our settings are correct. I think that looks really good. I think it's not too blown out. You can see good contrast. You can see lots of different figures in here. And it's important to keep in mind as well that this is simply the initial import of this file. So there's a lot more settings that we need to adjust as the project goes on, and that's really what SonarWiz is all about. This is just the beginning. So I'll zoom out here. Another useful feature, just to test and see if you like the import settings that you have, is you can click on View and then come over to Palette, and then within Palette you can choose different color schemes for your data to be presented in, and sometimes that'll highlight certain things that you were hoping to see. So you can see this this lava setting puts a slightly different spin on the data. Shows that contrast in a little more vivid coloring. I don't normally use lava. I normally, especially with Klein data, I'll stick with the Klein color scheme. But again, that's just something that you can use to check to see if your initial import settings are correct, which I believe these are. So as my data is changed back to Klein settings, I will click on post-processing again, and essentially for importing the rest of the data, you go through the same process to get to this dialog box, but once you're there, all of your settings from the previous import should still remain. So you can simply highlight the rest of your files and then import those and not have to mess around with any more settings, unless you want to change them, of course. So as you can see, I've got my 97% is still selected, channels 3 and 4. My dynamic range is still set, coordinate system still good. So I'll just go ahead and I'll select all of these just to make sure everything is imported in the same way. I'll click open, and we'll begin the import process for the rest of this data. We'll see the progress bar. There we go. Progress box will pop up, and I will skip ahead so you all don't have to watch this. And here we can see the end result of the import. As you can see, there's a lot more files on the screen now, and this is sort of the big picture of the mosaic files that we just imported. Before we conclude this video, I would like to just show you a few more features that will make moving around in the SonarWiz viewer a little bit easier to do. So we'll start with the file manager. And there's certainly be a whole video on the file manager itself, but if you just want to take a quick look at the various settings that you use to import your data in, if you open the file manager, you'll see all the files that you just imported, and then you'll also see checkboxes over here on the left. Now if you want to say enable only a certain set of files, then you uncheck those boxes. The checked boxes will be the only ones you'll see, and then click on OK to apply those settings. And you'll notice that some of these files will disappear. There we go. Okay, so those files are still there, still in your project, but they're just not being viewed right now. So I'll go back through, turn those on. It's just something helpful if you want to look at one specific file that you imported, want to check the settings on that after importing. It's just a good thing to know. Another thing to keep in mind, or another feature that you can look at, is if you click on Maps and go to Map Manager, and if you decided that the map you imported is not really the one you want, you can always click on that and remove it. Or if you just don't want to see the map right now, you can disable that the same way that you disable the files. Click on OK, and that will be the end of your map. And of course you can always come back into the map manager and turn it on, so on and so forth. Just re-enable that. Now, the final thing that we'll want to take a look at is the project folder. If you just go to Tools, Open Project Folder, we'll open it up, and you can just take a look at what or where, excuse me, your files have been saved. So your data was brought in, or this data anyway, was brought in an XTF format, and you can see that it's not there. And that's because it has been rewritten into a CSV format. There you go. So these are the files that you just imported in their SonarWiz form. Just so you know where it's at, and also to show you too that when you edit a project in SonarWiz, you're not editing the original XTF files. So that data will still be on whatever device you saved it prior to opening your SonarWiz project. So it's still there. All your original information is still there. You don't have to worry about changing that. You can obviously go through and change that, but you're going to have to go through your storage device. SonarWiz 5 is not going to do that for you. And that's just useful so that you always know you have that original information there. So I'll close out of that. And that concludes importing side scan sonar data into your SonarWiz 5 project.